All right, everyone, if I could have your attention, thank you so much for coming today. My name is John Canava. I'm the program coordinator for the Maze Innovation Research Center. You probably saw the emails coming from us from a few different email addresses. But again, thank you for coming today. We are very fortunate in that we have a fascinating individual who's going to share his insights with us. We're very lucky. His name is Mr. Christopher Bishop. He's right here. I had the fortune of meeting Chris at a conference in New York back in October, and we just happened to be sitting at the same table for lunch and got to talking, and I said, this is probably the most interesting person I've ever met. And so Chris now travels around and talks to people all over the world, and he was kind enough to join us here at Texas A&M from what, German literature, is that your start, to writing the jingle for Kit Kat, to touring with Chuck Berry, and working at IBM. He's done just about everything. So thank you for coming. I guess a quick 2 seconds on the center, the Maze Innovation Research Center, based here in the business school. If you have any questions, you can come up and see us in Suite 430. I'll leave it at that, because Bruce is going to take it away. So,
all right, cool.
Thank you so much.
So, we'll start with Gig'em Aggies.
Yeah.
I got it. Pretty close. For a guy from Connecticut. So, delighted to be here. Thank you for coming. I know you've got lots of other things to do with your time, so I appreciate it. I want to talk to you about the future of work, right? And my presentation is called How to Succeed at Jobs That Don't Exist Yet. So, some quick backstory on me. I describe myself as a nonlinear multimodal careerist, right? So I've had 7 careers so far in the 45 years since I graduated from college with a degree in German literature. That's what I studied. Minored in music. I've got some charts I want to take you through just to kind of orient you to what I've been doing, give you a sense of what I think the future of work is going to look like, and then I have some exercises at the end. So I want you to leave with some tools that will get you thinking about how to be prepared for jobs, right? So, you know, the common wisdom is we don't know what's coming, but I feel differently. I think we do know what's coming, and we can get a sense based on historical data and looking at current data. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. And looking at my multiple careers, I realize I'm kind of the poster child for the way you guys are all going to learn and certainly work in the 21st century's global borderless workplace, right? So a little bit of my background. I'm going to give you some social historical perspective. I think it's always good to look at the past when we're thinking about the future. Past is prologue, right? Get insights. Talk a little bit about emerging careers and how those work. My toolkit. I've taken my experience navigating successfully through these 7, now 8 careers and codified them into my future career toolkit. And it's 3 elements: voice, antenna, and mesh. We're going to do some exercises around that at the end of the session. And then what's next? So, my background. Here's a Gantt chart for all you consultants with years, and the x-axis years and y is things I've done. So, graduated from Bennington, got a gig with a touring rock band, moved to New York. I'll give you some more details, some fun pictures, but it's been interesting so far, right? And you're going to all have trajectories like this. Odds are good. This is me in the 70s, back when I had hair and I was skinny. I joined this band right after college and did 3 albums with them, toured England and all over the US. We opened for bands like ZZ Top, the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, bands your parents probably enjoyed. It was an amazing experience. Had a lot of fun. This is us somewhere in the Midwest, opening for Billy Preston. Let the String Tide, kind of a Texas touch, right? The band had a traditional trajectory, sold a lot of, never heard of the band, sold a lot of records, went out of business. So when the band went out of business, I figured, let me see if I can run with the big dogs. Go to New York. I was living in Ithaca, where Cornell is, right outside the city. So I moved to New York and started working as a freelance bass player, right? So I did a lot of cool stuff. This is me at CBGB's, my leather pants, with my power trio, NYC, doing my tunes. I toured with Robert Palmer, did 2 tours and a live album in London with him, playing bass and guitar and keyboards. This is us outside the Copenhagen airport in summer of 1981. I did a TV movie with Peter O'Toole and Jodie Foster and Elizabeth Ashley. That was kind of fun. And then got tired of being on the road and came back to the city and said, what can I do to get out of the Holiday Inn, dressing room circuit? And my friends in New York said, jingles, man. You got to get into the session scene. So I said, okay, how do I do that? So I basically networked into the jingle biz in New York. So it's a very tight clique. I began first as a player, as a bass player, and then working as an arranger, and then a composer, and then eventually a producer. So I had my first real job at age 40, working at a jingle house, running this right here. Anybody know what this is? Any musicians in here? No? It's an artifact for sure. It's called a synclavier, and it was the state-of-the-art digital musical instrument in the 80s. Right, so that's the segue too, worth noting is that along about 1985, when computers first began to appear, personal computers, I bought a Mac Plus in '86, this technology totally changed the music business in New York. Talk about disruptive technologies at a meta level, right? So music went from being 6 guys in the studio playing together to data, right? So think about that for a minute. This is a pattern that's going on today. AI is sort of the next disruptive technology in that kind of sea change, big picture model, right? So it was sort of sink or swim. It's like either learn how to run a digital musical instrument or get another job. So again, transferable skills. I knew how to play, I knew how to compose, I knew how to arrange, so I could now do it on this instrument. Just one guy, summon the timbre to the keyboard, here's the drums, here's the bass, here's the strings, and write music for television. So, as John had mentioned, I played bass and sang on the first Kit Kat jingle, so I'll give you my local rendering. Give me a break, break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. So, and that ran for like years and years, and you get paid residuals every time it's on TV or on the radio. So I made a lot of money just for that one session. Anyway, so the jingle biz, transformed by technology. In the early 90s, this other wacky technology appeared. You might have heard of it, called the World Wide Web. So this is like 94. I was working at a jingle house and said to the composer, why don't we build you a website? You have the cachet of being the first music house in New York to have your own website. We'll put little .av files. I mean, the audio was terrible. The quality was, awful. But it was a website, and no one had really built a website for a music company. So anyway, I started doing it, just fell in love with this new technology. Went to some classes, read a lot of books, went to users groups, taught myself to be a web producer. Transferable skills. Took the skills I'd used for producing jingles for television and moved them to the web and began producing websites. Got a gig at a couple of seminal interactive agencies, CKS Partners in Eagle River in New York. Working as a web producer, produced the Johnson & Johnson first corporate website, which had access to this Verity database, which was a worldwide employee job rec database, which at the time was pretty amazing, 1996, right? So produced a bunch of websites, and then commuting into New York from Connecticut, we lived in Connecticut at this point, I met a woman on the train who worked at Big Blue. She worked at IBM, and we stayed in touch, and she said, would you ever think of interviewing at Big Blue, because they're expanding my department? I said, well, I don't think so. What would I do at IBM? I don't have like a blue suit and a skinny red tie at the time. She said, well, just go meet with my VP, and I think you'll have an interesting conversation at the very least. I was totally not expecting anything to happen. Needless to say, I went to meet her. She looked at my resume, which had all the music stuff as well as the jingle stuff and the web stuff, and said, you have qualities that will make you successful at IBM. You're a creative problem solver, you're resourceful and resilient, you're comfortable with ambiguity, you're aware of working across multiple disciplines. She said, can you start next week? I was like, what? Me at IBM? Really? So anyway, I was hired by IBM, and I worked there for 15 years in a variety of roles. Corporate internet programs is where I started, but as the company began to realize they could make money and or service customers, partners, supply chain, deal with analysts and journalists using this web thing, we began to get pulled into these strategy roles. So I was working with line of business execs, conjuring ways to use the web to make their P&L, right, make their number, whatever. It was pretty amazing. This is my, by the way, I did a lot of work in virtual worlds. This is Christopher Express, my avatar in Second Life. We did a lot of work in the virtual universe community. I did a lot of social media, did a lot of tweet chats and that kind of thing, early days. This is me presenting the virtual green data center, which we built in Second Life, to the IBM board of directors at headquarters in Armonk. Yikes! They were interested, but a couple of them got it. Anyway, so I left IBM about 5 years ago, and I've been working as a freelance writer and speaker and talking about the future of work and the future in general, right? So I do some research for Institute for the Future, which is a think tank in Palo Alto. I did a TEDx Times Square talk, which is online, talking about my multiple careers, and that's kind of entertaining. I'm a member of the World Future Society. I've written chapters for books about the future of work. And so anyway, that's the establishing shot, right? So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I just want to say, too, like, let's make this interactive, right? Since we're a small group, please feel free to raise hands, or if anything doesn't make sense, or if I use an acronym you don't understand, or, you know, you don't need to just sit there, you know, watching me ramble on. So let's talk about socio-historical perspective. Again, I think when talking about the future, it's always good to think about what's come before. Now, this is a bit of an eye chart, and I'm not going to linger on it, but I just wanted to point out to you, there's this really great book by a woman, economist, Argentinian woman, Carlota Perez. Her book is called Technological Revolutions in Financial Capital. And she teaches at Cambridge. And she's broken down the past sort of 350 years into these 5 cycles, where there's an innovation, some kind of crash, and then ultimately an assimilation. So if you're interested, I just say check out this book, check out her. She's got videos on YouTube. You know, it starts with the Industrial Revolution, the age of steam and railways, right? The invention of the steam locomotive was transformative. Steel and electricity, you know, Henry Ford rolling out Model Ts in 1910, the age of automobiles and oil. And we're sort of in the age of information telematics, and I'd say it's influencing every aspect of our lives, right? So, just interesting book. Okay, so now we're at the first pop quiz of the presentation. Ready? On your thinking caps. So I'm going to give you a quote, and I want you to tell me who said it, and when it was said, and what it was said about. Okay? Ready? So here's the quote. I refuse to issue a patent for fear it will put my poor subjects out of work. Dum, 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 dum. Jeopardy, right? So, guesses? What do you think? The key is subjects, right? That gives it away. So it's a monarch of some kind. Yeah?
I guess Henry Ford.
Henry Ford? Well, that's a good guess. But so thinking subjects, though, right? So that puts it in some kind of monarchical system, right? So it would have to be someone who was overseeing subjects, right? Other ideas? Take a wild guess. It's risk-free, it's not on the test, it won't be graded. No? Okay, so it was Queen Elizabeth I, right? And she said it about someone applying for a patent for a mechanized knitting machine, right, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and she said it in 1589. A little perspective, right? So some people might be saying that about Twitter as a communications tool in this day and age, just for perspective, right? So all the way saying, this kind of conversation about technology disrupting jobs and business models has been going on for like 480 odd years. Okay, so the world of work has constantly been reinvented since we were hunters and gatherers, and it continues to be part of a process that's been going on for thousands of years. So my objective is to kind of give you pause, right? Take a deep breath. This is not a new thing. This kind of anxiety or apprehension about what the marketplace, job marketplace is going to look like has been going on for a long time. Many of the jobs today didn't exist like 5 years ago, right? Here's a list. These are just some, right? This is a random kind of sampling, but I'm sure we can think of many, many more. And don't need to belabor it, but autonomous vehicle operators. So that's a whole part of Google X, Waymo. I mean, you know, driverless trucks. This is going on. Blockchain. So blockchain and Bitcoin and crypto assets. That's a whole new space. People didn't. This didn't exist at all, like 3 years ago, right? sustainable energy technician. My nephew worked for Solar City for a while. That wasn't a job 5 years ago. There wasn't a business model that supported resources that got paid to do that. Right? 3D printing, right? Now it used to be sort of tchotchkes and little plastic toys or whatever. At Harvard now they're printing like vascular tissue and organs. I mean, it's going to be transformative. You know, and at the nation stages, data scientists. Any data scientists in the room? Anybody studying data science? So I was in a meeting at a hedge fund in New York a while ago, and the guy who runs it announced that he had just fired 100 analysts and hired 9 data scientists, probably at $1 million each a year, because he needs people who can look at lots of different data, connected orthogonally, help him make strategic decisions about information he's collecting. Okay, pop quiz number 2. So, Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, right? This is a public sector organization. They have no vested interest in the outcome of their data. The old consultant adage, you know, the data has no agenda. So they predict that today's learners are going to have a certain number of jobs by the time they're a certain age. So any guesses about, over the next, say, 20 years, how many jobs you might have? Wild guesses. It's more than 1.
5.
5, that's a good guess. Other guesses?
10.
Welcome. 10. So that's about it. 8 to 10 jobs, and they're saying by the time you're 38. Now this is, you know, this is an average, this is a guesstimate, but I mean, that's, again, BLS, this is like government data. This isn't like some think tank even, or somebody waxing philosophic, or Tim O'Reilly who has a vested interest, or the head of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. This is like the government saying. So anyway, it's the, you know, they're anticipating you're going to do lots of interesting stuff. That's the net of this, right?
This is 8 to 10 jobs, as in like after you graduate, or?
Yeah, after you graduate, yeah, for sure. And because you can, not because you have to, yeah.
Are these 8 to 10 jobs all within either the same company, or does it have to be different places that you're going there?
That's a good question. The general thinking is it'll be different settings, you know. So when I was at IBM, 15 years, I had probably half a dozen different jobs.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I worked in corporate headquarters a couple of times. I worked out in the line, supporting execs. I worked at Global Financing. I worked at the IBM Foundation. But their sense is that this is going to be different companies because, again, one of the drivers is a meta perspective, right? The rate and pace at which products and services are being developed is moving so fast that you'll have opportunities to do really interesting stuff in a lot of different settings, right? That makes sense? Right? It's cool. It's exciting. I mean, I wish somebody told me that when I was in college. These numbers vary, but the general consensus, the research indicates that 85% of the jobs that you're going to do over the next 20 years haven't been invented yet. That you're going to use technology that doesn't exist, right, that's going to make stuff like this look antiquated. You mean, Grandpa, you had to carry something around with you, like in your pocket, to like talk to Mom? I mean, what? That's really lame. How did you deal with that? You know, implantable medical devices, I mean, holographic delivery devices for education and entertainment, vertical farms. It's going to be stuff, you know, we can barely imagine. And you can use it, the key is to solve problems we don't yet know are problems. And then to paraphrase Tim O'Reilly, you know, as long as there are problems, there'll be jobs. Problems to solve means work on a meta level. Okay, so let's talk about emerging careers. This is one of my favorite parts of this. So they traditionally have been sort of monochromatic, if you will. But new careers are going to have what I describe as these 3 attributes. They're going to be connecting unlikely disciplines, right? Ones that haven't connected historically, necessarily. They're going to certainly be driven by technology, absolutely. And they're going to require old and new skills, so things you know how to do now, and then things you'll have to learn how to do to be successful in the future. So let's talk about some of them. So say you're interested in mechanical engineering. Any mechanical engineers? Anybody studying mechanical engineering? Okay. And maybe pharmacology. Anybody studying medicine or drug delivery? So the 3 chemists who won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago wanted for nano machines. So they're, in theory, developing stuff like this. Nanopharmacology, right? Being able to build machines at the nano level that deliver drugs and medicine at the atomic or molecular level. There's actually a company in California called IOTA that's building grain of rice-sized devices that you implant that capture data about your vascular system or your brain, they put them in your brain, and can also trigger, using ultrasound, electric pulses that can manipulate cells. So that's kind of cool, right? Say you're interested in architecture and mobility. You might be doing something like this, thinking about what kind of vehicles might exist in urban settings that are sustainable, that coexist with current models for transportation mobility. By the way, segue, did anyone read Dr. Ray's piece in National Affairs? Well, he wrote a really interesting piece about sort of interactive infrastructure and how it ties to autonomous vehicles. I highly recommend it. Check it out. So that's a career. So you're into robotics and what? Anyone into robotics here who's fascinated by that? That's a whole other field. Right? So who owns the decisions made by machines? Like if this robot drops something on somebody's foot, where does the proverbial buck stop, right? Is it the guy who made the robot or the gal who wrote the software or the company that owns the warehouse? Or so robotic ethicist, that's a new job. How about fashion and electronics? Anybody studying fashion design in here? So that's a whole other field. So Project Jakarta, Google X is investigating this, but here's one of their first products, a wired jean jacket. You can take phone calls while you're riding your bike in your coat, right? And they're developing clothing like this that, say, captures biometric data that can warn you of an impending heart attack or a seizure or whatever. I mean, it's all data. So wired clothing could have tremendous impact on personal health, right? One more example. Anyone into astrophysics? Or is there a hospitality school here? Do people study hospitality? So these two disciplines could combine. You could work at the Space Hotel. This is Orion Span. It's an artist rendering of a space hotel. It's going to have like 6 guests, 2 crew. You go up there and circle the Earth for 12 days. And you'd be serving guests as sort of the cruise in space kind of model, I guess. But you'd have to have some sense of, how do you serve cocktails in microgravity? I don't know, man. That's something somebody's got to figure out, right? Anyway, so you get my point, right? Lots of interesting and exciting stuff. So let's do the toolkit. How are we doing for time here? Good. So my ideas around, again, based on how I navigated these careers, I took a step back and tried to codify what were the common elements in this path so far, right? And I say so far because, I mean, it's, it's ongoing. Here I am. Voice is sort of defining your brand on steroids, figuring out what that is. Antenna is mapping what you do to what's happening in the world. And then mesh is this kind of 3D visualization of who you know and who you're connected to and who you can connect with. All right, so let's start with this. Let's start with voice. So the idea is to define your uniqueness. So how are we going to do that? What qualities make you stand out? And what is it that you do that no one else does? That's what you bring to market, right, in the real world. So keep in mind that your voice is going to change over time, depending on what your motivations are, your interests are. But there's a sort of core of you, like if you asked your mom, what do you do? Well, Chris is really good. He's a good musician, and he likes technology and whatever. So, but the way we're going to get into this is, I want you to pick a favorite book, a movie, or a TV show. You guys have something to write on or type on? I'll give you a few minutes to do this. So think about, is there a movie, book, TV, game that you like to play? Fortnite, players in here, whatever. And it can be current or from your childhood. Right? And the idea is, what do you like about it? What about it resonates with you? Or what speaks to your sort of inner value or inner worldview, right? So if you can, so write something. I'm going to give you like 5 minutes to do that. And then I'm going to ask people to read out, like, what is it? And I'll show you mine. This will give you a sense of, so for me, I'm obviously a future culture geek, so like Blade Runner, the recent Blade Runner was a great movie. I saw it in IMAX and 3D. I love that movie. And then I'm into global economics, so This book, Rise and Fall of Nations by Rushi Sharma. He's a head economist at Morgan Stanley. So that's kind of my voice represented in a movie and a book, right? Okay, so ready? I have a little timer. Let's do this. Okay, so think about it. TV, movie, game, can be from your childhood. Maybe you watched something when you were a kid, SpongeBob SquarePants. The idea is, what is it that resonates with you? What is it? Boom, boom, boom. I get music. Sort of one or two, it's the old first thought, best thought, so don't over-engineer it, what comes to mind. Can't see my timer, I gotta get on the screen. One more minute, right? You guys are close. Okay, everybody got something to share? Who wants to volunteer? So I can tell you a movie, TV, book, game, whatever, that resonates with you. And why it resonates, yeah.
The book I chose is How You Measure Life by Clayton Christensen. So really enjoyed that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what is it about that book that sort of speaks to your personal worldview?
I think one of the things I took away from it was significance. So significance with your life. How do you live that past just making money? How do you determine exactly how you want to accomplish things and live by your values? And then consistency was another thing, in that you are consistent at the workplace, your home, your friends, all those relationships. You become someone who's defined by values and not by context.
Yeah, right. So, and another, so that's one. Is there another? Was there like a movie or TV show, or just the book?
I put Good Will Hunting for the movie. I really like that.
Yeah.
So
Okay, what about that movie that spoke to you?
Yeah, I put the vulnerability in it. So when Will is going through all the things that he's discussing and everything, how he has to be vulnerable, be authentic with himself to truly understand what's going on. And then the idea of choice and individuality, in the sense that, everyone said, okay, you're the smartest guy in the room, go do MIT, go get fellowships and all that. But really, he just wanted to be able to be happy and be with those that he loves and cares. So I thought that was also interesting.
So yeah, so that's great. So that's
I also put Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Did you really? Yeah.
I,
That's an amazing movie, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, I have just a little bit of different reason of why, and it was just because he didn't realize how far he could go, because he had never been pushed. He didn't have a father. He was in and out of homes and things like that. Didn't have any parents or anything like that. And it took the therapist telling him, hey, look, like, you can be something, and he just didn't want to push himself. And it took it took somebody getting in his ear and being like, listen, you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
And he had the same lifestyle. He was comfortable with manual labor jobs, in and out of jail, and he didn't want to do anything else, even though he had the brain power to be something amazing.
Yeah.
And
So how does it speak to you? Not to interrupt you, but so that you, and the implication is you have, that's an awareness, and you all have that kind of ability to do stuff that maybe you don't think you can do, or that you might seem intimidating, or, right? I mean.
Right, so that's one reason why it did speak to me, because I'm actually a sophomore here, but I'm 22 years old. I spent 2 years working in construction because I said, after my first year of college, I hate this, I don't want to do it anymore, it's too hard. And I was at Blinn at the time, and I was just like, I don't want to do it anymore. And it took, doing all that work to make me realize I don't want to do this forever. And then that's whenever I was able to come back with talks with, my girlfriend sat me down and was like, look, you can do a lot more. You can do a lot more than this. And you have potential to do a lot more, and I didn't think I did, yeah, and here I am now back at A&M.
Pretty cool. So that's great. So other insights that you got from this? Volunteers, don't be shy. Oh, here, lady in the back.
Okay, I chose a podcast called Serial.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really like it.
You guys know
because-
Serial? Do you know about that podcast? Yeah.
It's great. I really like it because it maintains a narrative, but still picks apart the details, and it's very inquisitive. And it is based on reality. I mean, it's like a true story, so that automatically makes it engaging for me.
Yeah.
Because it's not just fiction. And it also provides insight to the legal field, and I want to go to law school, so I find that really interesting. And then I picked The Things They Carried, which is a book by Tim O'Brien. And I think my favorite thing about that book is that it challenges the concept of reality in a kind of unexpected way, because it's written based on his experiences in the Vietnam War, but it also is written as fiction, and so the way he writes it is to invoke the same feelings in the reader that someone who is experiencing it would have felt. So it's exaggerated because you're not actually experiencing it, so it has to be over the top. So it's fiction, but it's not
Right.
really.
So that sort of that blend of
Yeah.
fiction and real world for emotional impact.
Mhm.
So that implies a lot of interesting insight. Yeah. So Judith, you had.
Yeah, I chose My Little Princess. It's I love it since I was a child. I just love the values of the movie, and then also she has a lot of money, and her dad goes to the war, and so she stays in what's it called? Where they're all the little girls without parents.
Oh, like
orphanage. Right,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
orphanage.
Mhm.
And so she empowers others with her stories and just her way of being. And then supposedly her father passes away, and so she loses everything. And the one who's in charge of that orphanage treats her very badly, but she still empowers others in the relationship that she has with the other little girls. It's just something that I admire from that movie.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I chose was The Intern. I love Robert De Niro in that movie,
Yeah.
and how she interacts with people, and I don't know, it's just very funny.
Yeah. So the multi-generational thing, right? That he's older, but
Yeah.
but gives her insight that she wouldn't get from other people.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Let's do another one more. Yeah, this gentleman in the back.
So I chose Outliers as the book. What I like about Outliers is that it shows you how first you can have an opportunity. So then from that opportunity you can embrace it, so then you can become the person that you want to be. Just like Bill Gates, when he had the access to the computer when he was 6 years old, that's how he learned how to actually become the CEO of Microsoft.
Yeah.
And for the movie, I chose Big Short, because the Big Short, it showed me how to, it learned me finance, because I have never learned it in any classroom more than in that book. And I also like how outsiders actually do the work in that movie, because everybody just do their everyday lives, everybody in the banks, and then these outsiders, that are actually pessimistic, they were looking in how the world will collapse.
Yeah, so another perspective, that doesn't align with what the status quo is or what everyone else is thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so good, that's great. Did you do one more? Very good. This gentleman, yeah.
I went old school with my movie, because we didn't have TV growing up, so we were given 18 movies. But Swiss Family Robinson, I loved.
The guy I work with loves that movie, and it always comes up when we do these sessions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about that resonated?
Well, I think that they get stranded in a circumstance that's seemingly impossible, and then they have to problem solve that into some very elaborate and set pieces that come up too. But I love that treehouse that they built.
Yeah, me too.
But I also like just the context. It solidifies what's important because it's done in the context of family and friendship. So
Yeah, and the problem-solving aspect, right? I mean,
big time.
I think of like The Martian, right? The similar sort of the modern version. He's stuck, and he's like, I gotta science the heck out of this
Yeah.
to figure out how to solve the problem. All right, so good. So that's great. So that's the idea, right? So that's the voice piece, right? That's sort of who you are, using this as a tool to think about, what it is that resonates with you, that you enjoy, that you do well, that you're passionate about, that'll influence what you study, and certainly, what you do in the real world, having a career, right? So let's do the next one. Next one is, oh, you know what, I'm happy because I switched to my time. So this piece is, I call antenna, right? And this is looking at what's going on in the world from a social, cultural, political, technical perspective, right? You want to see what's happening. We're going to align the voice with the antenna findings, right? So the idea is, think about sources based on what you discovered with your voice exercise, where you might where these conversations are going on, where information around problem solving, or being motivated to do something you didn't think you could do, or researching other aspects of your voice kind of findings around legal aspects and storytelling that's fictional but real world but that has emotional impact, right? So where are those kinds of conversations going on? And I want this to be very sort of tactical, right? Let's talk real world. So for me, this is some of the sources that I use, right? I'm an inveterate researcher. I track and follow lots of different data sources. These are kind of high-level categories. So I'm interested in future culture. There's a website called Futurism, and a guy who's the editor publishes a newsletter, and they have a website talking about kind of what's coming, again, at a meta level, not just work, but kind of technology and culture and politics. I certainly read the New York Times every day. I mean, I read it on my phone. Tech, you guys familiar with MIT Tech Review? It's a magazine and a website, and just really interesting, forward-thinking conversations going on there. They do something every year called 35 under 35. They identify sort of scientists and researchers all over the world. They're doing really interesting stuff. So that's interesting to me. BBC Click is a TV show that I watch. And then on Global Business, Bloomberg Tech, which is another TV show that's on every day at 5 o'clock. And the Wall Street Journal, their website as well. So what I want you to do is think about sources based on the voice findings, right? And it doesn't have to be a long list, but think about a voice characteristic and where those conversations might be going on. And use your tools, use your phone, use your laptop, whatever, and make a list, right? And what I'm going to do this in two sections. I want you to think about it on your own, and then I want you to turn to the person next to you and pick their large and experienced brain about what they think, where resources might be available to you that you hadn't thought of. Right? Make sense? Okay, good? All right, so think about sources. Because you probably do this already, right? Like you're reading stuff already about things you're interested in. But then we're going to sort of codify this again, put some process around it. Okay? You ready? We'll start singing the Jeopardy theme again. Do 5 minutes individually, and then I'm going to stop you and I want you to turn to your neighbor. Here we go. Show my timer. Let's see, this is a plug-in. say? Going off what you wrote earlier, sorry, but I mean, yeah, based on the kind of voice, so you had described sort of good hunting and sort of being motivated and problem solving, doing things you didn't think you could do maybe. So where might those conversations be going on? Like, it might be, you know, motivational blogs written by somebody, or who's investigating that kind of thinking, right?
Right.
Like, and yeah, like even Google's, you know, Google blogs written by people focused on, you know, it's probably like motivational or self-help kind of, right? Where are those conversations? And it can be anything. It could be a blog, could be a TED Talk, could be a book, could be a TV show, could be a newspaper, could be a When you've got a solid list, turn to the person next to you. You got to maybe do 3. And when you got a list you're comfortable with, there's no time to how much time? So, where might he find sources based on what
Entonces la agarró a su casa y le puso chile para y así, me gustó mucho. Ahora sí, I really want to try that. Yeah, right. That's like in general. One of these
Yeah, innovators.
Any mic or shot? 30 seconds.
Talking about first is always you find something that relates to the child and the second is the
Okay, pausing you guys, all right, pencils down. All right, so how is that? Is that interesting? So this is a key aspect of this sort of set of exercises, because this is kind of where the future lies, right? This is where new careers come from, where conversations about your voice topics are going on. Like you might even Google, the future of motivational, self-directed problem solving, or the future of, storytelling that combines real world with fiction and has emotional impact. It's happening in VR and AR, for example, right? That's where that's going. So this is key to figure out what's coming, what the opportunities are going to be for you guys, right? So that said, who wants to share something that they found, like a source that ties to their voice, right? A clear connection. Anybody? Don't be shy. Come on. I heard a lot of talking. That was cool. That was good. And again, yeah. So please.
Well, one of them is the voice attributes. So for I'm interested in journalism and media and things like that. So for earlier, I was thinking the President's Sins, but how Redbird and Dustin Hoffman and stuff, which is pretty related to again just journalism things, which then relates to possibly the Washington Post, which is what they did stuff to find out about the scandals and whatnot, which is a newspaper. So.
Yeah. So cool. So what about? And then thinking about is there another source so that's one. Is there an additional one that's maybe not as traditional?
I mean, they have I'm sure they have an app and an online component. Do you mean a?
Yeah, or even podcast components, or because again we're thinking future, right? We're thinking you guys in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Some of you may live to be 100. They say.
And I know most, we had, in one of my journalism classes yesterday, they were actually asking us how we got into our news, and most people said Twitter. So
well really, so the idea is, what's after Twitter? So I would venture a guess it's AR, right? It's going to be news that you render wearing HoloLens, and it appears and kind of manipulated and moving around. So who's going to write content for that channel? Could be you, right? I mean, it could be. All right, that's a good one. Another one, a source. Who found sources? We're looking at sources, right? Come on, don't be shy. Don't put me on the spot. Yeah.
Well, my voice attribute, I said ethics because I'm interested in ethics. And I watched YouTube clips of Christopher Hitchens, very prominent economist, philosophical figure. I just enjoy what he talks about. So.
Yeah, so that's great. So that's exactly the right idea, right? So where are those conversations going on? And even the future of, so who's the next Christopher Hitchens, right? Who's his protege, or even who's sort of countering his worldview that would give you insight into another perspective on what he says, right? But that's the idea, right? Let's do one other. Somebody else be brave. Come on. A source. Find a source. Yes, sir.
A little bit different tact. I probably would have selected a different movie in the book if I was thinking about down the line how to relate them. But I have a lot of varied interests, and one of the places I found that a really good source of me, walking through the living room, my wife watches a lot of History Channel, a lot of
I love the History
relevance, and I love trying to tie that into what we have today and figuring out where we're going, and find many interesting relationships to that. And the second source is here at Texas A&M, we have the Bush Museum next door, and I thoroughly enjoy their variety of programs. This week we had choirs from Harvard and A&M. We had Madeline Albright speaking last fall. It was really an endeavor, and I guarantee you I would never read or listen to her talk if it hadn't been here and presented, and it was a very good experience.
That's great. So the other thing I'll say about these, so this is like an exercise you can do, but I hope you take this away and think about it. You could do it, you know, on the weekend or whenever. And the idea, there's other level of granularity around this is thinking about how frequently you check these sources or monitor them, right? So there are ones that I check every day. I look at the New York Times every day. I look at Bloomberg like once a week. So commit to, you know, one's daily, one's weekly, and maybe one's monthly, like a book. Like you read a Malcolm Gladwell book, or you go to a movie, or you watch a YouTube video by Christopher Hitchens or whatever, you know. So set up kind of a schedule to get this information, right? Make sense? Okay, so the final piece of this is what I call mesh. And I think of this as like a 3D data visualization of who you know and who they know, put simply, right? So a few years ago, LinkedIn used to offer this really cool insight, they called it, and it was color-coded 3D representation of your network. So for me, I should put one in the slide, but it was like all the blue, it was like a blue globule with like, you know, data points. That was my IBM network. There was a yellow one with probably more, that was my music network. There was a college network. There was a futurist network. They all kind of connected in different ways. You can sort of visually see them. So I want you to think about a Venn diagram at least overlapping, but also thinking 3D, like who do you know and how did you meet them and where did they connect? A little exercise we're going to do here, just around finding people based on your voice. I preface this by saying CRM. Anybody know CRM? Anybody using a CRM tool? Yeah. So what tool do you use? You have one you like?
So I actually manage 2 databases for the center,
cool.
Contactually and GetResponse.
Oh yeah.
I like and dislike them both.
Yeah, well that's sort of, yeah, it's a love-hate, right?
Yeah.
But all by way of saying, when you get into this, so the adage is oft ascribed to showbiz, but is true today in every biz, which is it's not what you know, it's who you know. So, and as you go through these multiple careers, you're going to have a lot of people to keep track of, right? And it's going to be more than an address book on your phone can handle. That's not an efficient way to do this in this new model. So there are tools that I like. I mean, this is the one I prefer. It's called Less Annoying CRM. And it's cloud-based. People know what CRM is, by the customer relationship management? It's like a database on steroids. It lets you keep track of who you spoke to when and where they work and who their friends are and how you're connected to them. And you can attach files to some of them. And it's a way to keep track of relationships, right? So it's like an address book on steroids. Zoho is one that people use. I don't particularly like it. Apt is a big fat client that takes up way too much space on your hard drive. But there are lots of different options. So I would encourage you to explore, because that's a key part of how you're going to manage your mesh. All right? So we have like 5 minutes, but I really want to do this one. This is this final exercise. The idea is to take the findings from the voice and antenna exercise, right, and go on LinkedIn, and I'm going to, because LinkedIn is, with all due respect, it's the lingua franca, right? It's the coin of the realm. Everybody have a LinkedIn profile? Show of hands who's got a LinkedIn profile. Who doesn't have a LinkedIn profile? Okay, this is me being your mom and wagging my finger at you. You better have a LinkedIn profile, sonny. Because, I mean, that's what recruiters look at. That's what potential employers, I mean, companies, colleagues. I met this guy at Texas A&M, but his LinkedIn profile is like, I don't know, it's not quite as pimped out as I think it should be. I don't get a sense of what he's doing or where he's been, right? So please work on your LinkedIn profile. You know, make it really represent who you are. Okay, so this exercise is, I want you to go on LinkedIn, I want you to find 3 people to connect with based on your interest. You've shared your interest, your voice, right? And I want you to find at least one group based on that topic. So find economists, this is, right? Who's Christopher Hitchens? Look for Christopher Hitchens, see who he's connected to, pick out 3 names of people in his network. Seriously, I'm serious. And find a group that he's in. And each of you do the same, right? Based on your interest. Right, I'm gonna give you like 3 minutes to do this, because we gotta wrap it up, and we have a hard stop it here. Bum, bum, bum. It's all about who you know. And it's gonna grow, you know, building a network never ends. It's not like you wake up on Tuesday and go, okay, I got my network, I'm set, I can chill now. This is like right to the end. Doing this till you're done. And you keep, when you look at these names, you also want to drill down and see who they know that you might know. So you can connect with them. So you're on their proverbial radar. I'm sure there's a huge Texas A&M like alumni population that is a place to start. You know, you reach for them and say, I went to Texas A&M, they go, well, yeah, let's have a phone call, or let's have coffee, let's get a Zoom meeting set up, or come see me. This is real world stuff, right? So 3 people and then a group. I want people to read out what they found. Look for reporters at the Washington Post. Totally. I mean, who is there that you know, or that you'd like to know? Right? So do you find a LinkedIn group that's doing social and emotional impactful content for...
I'm looking for legal groups.
Legal groups, okay, there you go, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have to clear this really noon? Do you know, are we going to throw us out? Class coming in here?
LinkedIn will do a lot of what we were talking about for you. It will actually create a list of people and ask you, do you know these?
Yeah, I wish LinkedIn would really like kick it in and become a CRM. The earlier version, you could actually take notes and stuff, but they changed it. Maybe Microsoft will, now that they're owned by Microsoft.
It doesn't work real well, at least for me, on a small device.
Yeah, I agree. The app
to
is,
look at it there.
I agree, it's not the best. But I mean, it works. It's not the greatest.
I was actually navigating some of the Connect offerings that it had, looking at some folks last night, so it can be very interesting.
Yeah. Wait, Judith, were you going to say something?
No, I think I have about 30 minutes.
We have 10 more minutes? Okay, all right, you check the schedule. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to stop you now, because we have 10 minutes, and I want to hear what people found, and then have some sort of closing comments. Who wants to talk about what people they found? Who's got an interesting person they found that they're going to reach for? Somebody? Anybody? You didn't find anybody interesting to connect with?
I'll tell you one I found right before this, since I don't carry my laptop with me to work on this. Someone mentioned this morning that they had a student here at A&M in one of their classes, and their grandfather was out there, and he was a member of the IBM group on LinkedIn. So I went to look and look between representations this morning, and I found him. He's in Fort Worth. He retired in 1999.
Wow.
So there's a lot of that, and immediately LinkedIn shows me all of the people that he knows
Yes.
to see if I've got any overlaps.
Yeah.
in that.
So I mean, I would say join the Texas A&M alumni group like immediately, like as soon as you leave
It's
the room,
automatic.
right? I mean, that's an easy, low-hanging fruit, easy target. You're in there, and then navigate through there, like who's doing journalism, legal, motivational speaking, whatever other topic. Who found somebody interesting? One person? Anybody? And somebody working on databases?
Actually, I did find someone who did CRM management at a software consultant group,
Oh, cool.
and then moved to United Launch Alliance to work as a chief engineer in human and commercial systems.
Wow.
So I'm actually interested in industrial engineering, so
So,
she sounds very interesting.
so you should reach, it's a her,
Mhm.
so reach for her, yeah. So the other thing, so the sidebar is, I highly recommend getting a like professional or premium account. I know it's like $25 a month or something, which I know for college students can be challenging. But the thing it does two things. It puts a little a symbol, sticker on your LinkedIn profile that indicates you have that account, so that the intimation is you understand the value of LinkedIn. But more broadly, it lets you send digital cold calls, in-mails they call them. So you could reach for someone that you don't know with an in-mail. It's a little more formal. It pops up this form, you put in a subject, and they recommend people that you might know that they know. But I've used it a lot to reach for people that I don't know that I want to have a conversation with. It's a great tool. So yeah, so what about a group? Did you find a group?
I did not find a group.
Okay. Anybody find a group? Who found a group? Anybody? Is there like a legal group? Did you find a?
Well, I found Harvard, I'm so sorry.
No, it's
I
all right.
found Harvard Business Review that I was going to join, but they capped their members.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them, you have to request to join, and
Yeah.
they look at your bona fides, and it's like, well, maybe not yet, But probe, investigate, right?
Yeah.
Query. So yeah, did you find a group?
I did. So I'm interested in learning different languages. I think it's really fun. And I found a group, but I'm also interested in software and how they interconnect. And I found a group that's one of the pioneers in globalization and translation technologies and services. So I think that's fun to learn about.
Yeah, so did you request to join it, or can you join it, or? Yeah.
I requested to join.
Yeah, good for you. So the idea, right, the intimation is there are people in that group that are doing interesting stuff that might hire you someday, right? And you want to, you can, certainly these groups have conversations and dialogues and people posting, and it's okay to lurk, right, to kind of watch and monitor. But at some point, if you see some comment or you see some topic going by that you want to weigh in on, that's how you sort of establish your credibility in that space. Oh, this woman from Texas A&M just weighed in about translation technology, and it's a pretty interesting comment. Maybe we should talk to her about getting her engaged in what we're doing here at Company X. Right? Make sense? Yeah.
So I actually just set it up while we were doing everything.
Okay.
Made a LinkedIn.
I scared you a little bit?
Yes, I did. But I was wondering, because me personally, anytime I've ever gotten a job, I've gone in and filled out an application. How exactly, coming out of college, do you get headhunted for things like this?
Yeah, well, so, people are going to be, recruiters are going to be looking for you, right? But the other thing is, this is a quote from the VP of Global Talent at LinkedIn. I was at a meeting that he was at, and he says, the war for talent, which is what you guys are, that's how HR people view you, as talent. The war for talent is over, talent has won. Right? I mean, that's his perspective. So you guys and gals are empowered to take control. So they're going to head on you, but there are lots of tools like Upwork. LinkedIn is, again, where you put your kind of value prop out there. And it's a way, you're more in control now than ever before because of all the opportunity that's out there. Again, as I said at the beginning, rate and pace at which portfolios of products and services are changing requires people who can think on their feet, that can adjust quickly, that can solve problems, they're not looking necessarily for niche skills or expertise. They're looking for people that can think broadly and have the ability to adjust and modify and learn what they need to learn, figure what they don't know and learn how to learn it, and then learn it and bring it to the situation. Right? Make sense? Yeah.
It seems like we actually have some groups available for major specific stuff from here. I actually found one for my specific college. So,
Wow,
yeah.
great. So that's great. So here at Texas A&M.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, again, exploit it, right? Use the tools. So when I was breaking into the jingle business in New York, I literally had a plastic box with 3x5 cards, and I I wrote on it, I talked to Tom Anthony Music, and they said send the tape next week and call me on Thursday. And so you have these incredible tools now in which you manage and manipulate and control your network. So I'm going to run ahead here. This other exercise we don't have time to do. I'll come back and do it some other time with you guys. Just putting it all together, right? So continue to reflect on your voice, what it is that resonates with you, that makes you unique, that makes your value prop worth engaging with, right? Antenna, be diligent about monitoring what's going on in the outside world from a technological, from a social, cultural perspective, right? And it's always changing and moving, but that's sort of where the market is. And be aware that that's where it's trending. When you do these searches on the antenna stuff, a good way to do it is preface it with the future of law, the future of motivation, the future of journalism. And you'll find where those conversations are going on and who the people are that are having these conversations, and get engaged, Again, lurking is okay initially, but get involved so they know who you are. So when they have an opportunity, oh, let's reach for that woman in Texas A&M. She had made an interesting comment, or I found her, she sent me a link to her LinkedIn profile or her website or whatever. It's pretty cool. And then Mesh, this is my admonition, add 5 people a week to your LinkedIn profile. Make it your job. That's your homework, right? And it never stops. It goes on, make that a mission. If you haven't done it, check yourself on Sunday night. Did I add 5 people this week? If not, go out and do it. I mean, I know that sounds like a lot, but the other thing is you want to have 500 people, is kind of the clip level on LinkedIn that shows you really understand the value of the tool. Like if you go on people's profiles, it says 500 plus, okay, well, they get it, But people with like 27 contacts or 237 people, they haven't quite figured it out yet. Right? All right, so that's kind of what I had to share with you. This is my contact info. I tweet about this stuff at Chris Bishop. My email is chris@improvisingcareers. Connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. Reach for me. And I hope this was valuable. Thank you very much for your time.